let's face it, like advertising is getting more expensive every single day. Similarly, outbound is getting a little bit more complicated and also a little bit more expensive as well.
If you're reaching out to the wrong people with really, really good messaging, you might get marked as spam. It's not going to work. You're not really going to have good reply rates either, and so on. So
we used to think that we only needed to nail our email copy once and then we can scale that campaign to hundreds and thousands of prospects. And we're now seeing that email filters can actually detect the same email body being sent to multiple people.
to identify yourself, don't raise any red flags, and make sure that you're not having that code trying to push its way into the inbox of your leads.
No, infrastructure at the end of the day is not going to do the trick if everything else is not optimized.
Quite rare. So you make sure you have SPF, DKIM, all of the acronyms, and then you have your sending volume. So your sending volume has to be less than 30 emails a day, the total. It just does.
Especially important because imagine if there's spammers in your network that are actually mostly sending spam out there. It probably means that your campaign, yeah, you'll get boosted and you'll get on the inbox, but you're associated with email addresses that are delivering spam.
Thing like that. And this is one of my favorite things when I give these kind of tips, advice, or whatever you want to call it. People follow most of them. They don't follow all of them.
Hello. While we're getting started, let me find a way to unmute Tal, who's just joined us as well. How are we all doing? Okay, I think that should work. Let's get to know each other. If you want, drop in the chat where you're joining from, city, time zone, country, and the name of your business or anything that you're working on that you're excited about right now. Perfect. We have people from India, we have people from the US. We definitely have people from all over Europe. Nice. Good to see everyone joining. And the good end of the year roundup, like putting together the slides and all the know-how for the presentation was definitely a good reflection. I think you'll get to share this as well for what has happened this year. People using Lemlist for 3 years here. Nice. Yeah, I've been using Lemlist literally since before their AppSumo launch. I think it was 2018 or 2019. So a lot of love for the Lemlist team, for Guillaume, for everyone involved, and that's why I was super into doing this. All right, that
The
should
host
work.
would like you to unmute. Hello.
Oh, okay. I thought I had done that. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. You got the message through, and now you can hear me loud and clear. Hello.
Perfect. Good to
Hello,
see you, man.
everybody.
How you doing?
Good to see you too. Very good. Very, very good indeed. Feeling good for
Nice.
Christmas, actually. Feeling
Sorry?
good for Christmas. Feeling good for Christmas. I'm excited about
Oh
Christmas.
yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a good time of the year. This one and then we're done. And then we curtains pulled and then we go to 2025.
Exactly.
And we have some awesome things planned. All right. Should we get started?
Let's go.
Cool. Let me make sure we have recording just in case someone's late and we can send it afterwards. So 2024, and that's why I was saying I was gathering my thoughts. 2024 has been kind of a weird year for cold email. Like it started with Google announcing and then going forward with their new policies around spam filters and their inbox and the DNS settings that you have to have starting February of 2024. That's kind of when our campaign started having like a major hit, which was any campaign that included Gmail addresses, and I think this is important to address, what just went to zero, went to red all the way. And there's a really obvious, reason behind that. Obviously, they wanted to prevent cold email and outbound from personal email addresses, but what about all the freelancers who, wouldn't necessarily be bothered to set up a regular website, and why would they? And would just use a Gmail address as their primary business email. Like all those people can now, like more or less, not be contacted unless you really have to do it. But again, it made everything so much risky. Then around the middle of 2024, we started hearing about deliverability issues from Microsoft inboxes, well documented, still no solution. It's not like emails are not going through, but it's become harder even for legitimate emails going out there to land on the inbox, at least for Microsoft inboxes. And then we had to finish the year strong with yet another update from Google, this time marking messages that include hidden images, aka call me pixel, as spam, thus requiring yet again one more change, making things even more complicated. So delivering to the inbox became harder, especially for Microsoft. Open rates have gone down if you're tracking them, but they've gone down nonetheless. Positive replies overall are down, and everyone's complaining cold email is dying. And I know we were complaining in beginning of 2024, like, probably a little bit unwarranted, but now like this is real. But it's also been an interesting year for cold email, and we really can't forget about these things that happened. Having waterfall enrichment for email addresses, meaning that we can maximize the number of valid emails we get for every prospect. Having scalable AI powered list building, being able to combine multiple data sources, having AI copywriting and personalization in the game, being able to detect website visitors and run campaigns around that, and having more creative and intent based campaigns, plus the ability to obviously set up inboxes much faster with just a few clicks. And obviously, the year was really cool because of these things that happened. I'm a big sucker for updates and anything new in terms of infrastructure, processes, and updates. But it also means that these things are kind of like a reason why cold email became harder, and also part of the reason why cold email became a little bit easier as well. And it's natural to blame email, but you might be missing the picture because this is something that all channels go through. They go through these channels when things are especially easy. Everyone goes into the channel and then it becomes harder. Anyone doing Facebook ads, will remember what happened with Meta after the GDPR update, after the almost sunset of cookies. Really big kind of issue. And let's face it, like advertising is getting more expensive every single day. Similarly, outbound is getting a little bit more complicated and also a little bit more expensive as well. Same thing, exactly the same thing. Cold email created too much noise within inboxes. AI made it easier to scale campaigns. AI plus a lot of tools in the industry, and then Google and Microsoft obviously eventually had to regulate it. So, what can we do moving forward? And what we're going to be discussing today is the new infrastructure that allows you to land on the inbox, AI-powered emails and copywriting to avoid spam filters, and advanced deliverability hacks, all straight from the oven. This is things that we're testing and have been implementing, and even as late as November and December of this year. I'm not gonna make any intros about Tal or myself. I think everyone knows Lemlist. Sales Captain has been part of the journey since the beginning. So, if you want to look us up, you can definitely do that. I'll take a pause. I'll leave this slide here. If anyone wants to download the presentation and the resources that are included, you can do that. There are spoilers, so I'd recommend you do it later on. But I'm gonna take a breath for Tal to say a few things and just let me know like how much you resonate, how have you seen things so far from Lemlist perspective as well for 2024.
I think I normally bring it back to four things. So the four pillars, I call it, of prospection. So it depends on whether what sort of level the person doing prospection is, if they're beginner or if they're advanced or if they're having difficulty, and whatever it is, it comes down to deliverability is one. Then you have finding leads or finding the right leads, enrichment, which you've already touched on, and then copywriting. Copywriting, all of those four, obviously they encompass campaign creation, campaign length, what you're saying in the copywriting, the data quality in terms of deliverable, not deliverable, multiple different sources, and then you have the finding the lead. So at the end of it, if you're reaching out with really good copy, amazing value maybe, or you're solving problems for people that you're reaching out to with your LinkedIn or your emails, well, emails in this case, we're talking about deliverability. If you're reaching out to the wrong people with really good messaging, you might get marked as spam. It's not going to work. You're not really going to have good reply rates either, and so on. So all of that is under the funnel of deliverability, which is the foundations of it. Because if that doesn't work, nothing really will work. And I found that over time, there are a few things that people make the same mistakes. I don't know how many spoilers we want to go into, but there's normally about 7 mistakes that people make with outbound, irrespective of how good they are and how advanced they claim to be or think they are, or how many meetings they're booking, whatever level of problem that they have. And it normally comes down to warm-up tool. It normally comes down to the number of emails that they're sending with sending limits, and it comes down to not understanding that warm-up emails also contribute towards your daily sending limits. I'll perhaps leave it there, but also we're going to go on to domain limits,
Yeah.
how mature your domain is, and so on. But it's a lot. Over and over again, I run into the same things.
No, no, that's awesome. And you have a lot of practical tips. You've been, in the trenches and sharing stuff, on steroids literally over the last, like, I think 2+ years now. So definitely have a lot of tips for you to interject within the presentation. Now, I've split it into two parts. The first one is 101 things that everyone should be doing literally tomorrow, and will include almost all the things that you've just mentioned. It's things that if they're not there, the campaign is not working, but it's also things that are easy to implement. So the focus is on that, being easy to implement, and also be easy to have in place. By the way, questions, leave it on the chat. We'll spend some time during the end answering that. The first one, which anyone doing outbound had it in place: DNS records, SPF records, DKIM, DMARC. It's something that, again, we have been implementing for the last like 2 to 3 years, but starting February 2024 with Google's new update, this became almost mandatory. I'm not going to go into detail because no one really needs to understand what these records stand for. Or all you need to know is like how to set them up, setting them up, and then obviously as a bonus, since you're touching your DNS settings, having custom link tracking, not allowing obviously campaigns to be sent using default links. And then Lemlist is actually a really good guide for setting up DNS records. I've linked it in the presentation. You can download the slides and check it out. Obvious, basic for every domain, this needs to be there. The second one is obviously, and I think this is, I was looking back into the days where we were discussing what are the sending limits per day for Google Workspace, and it was something like 1,000 emails, and then it became 500, and then it became 100 per day, and then it became 50 per day, and then it's now come to the point where if you're setting up a Google inbox or any other provider, the best case is doing 15 to 30 emails sent per inbox per day. If you're using Microsoft inboxes, it has to be even lower, to around 10 emails a day per inbox. And I think this is like the biggest shift that kind of shows that how cold email has become a little bit more expensive. Because yes, you can use other providers, you can set up your inboxes much faster if you're not relying on Google, but still the cost is there because in order to have one email account or two, three email accounts, you need one domain, and then for every domain you can only set up about 3 inboxes, safely speaking, without having too much of an issue. So basic update, something I feel like everyone has and has had on their plates so far. Obviously, using inbox rotation, and I know Lemlist has that enabled by default, allows you to exchange email accounts within a campaign for specific prospects, which makes it really easy to just use multiple inboxes. So yeah, two basic ones, along with obviously some changes in the copywriting. And how, I don't know if you want to take the lead on this one. Obviously, there's many, many, many things that people out to be doing. I've only laid out a few of the basic ones, like, obviously don't use images in the signature, don't use many links, maybe even just one would do. Rotating your campaign copy and experimenting with different angles. And also kind of like this biggest change, which is we used to think that we only need to nail our email copy once, and then we can scale that campaign to hundreds and thousands of prospects. And we're now seeing that email filters can actually detect the same email body being sent to multiple people, which means that every now and then you actually have to be tweaking your entire email to make it work, even if you had the recipe that worked at some point.
Yeah, I'm just getting up something else as well that I normally share with clients. So I have a list of cold email guidelines. I'll run through them as quickly as possible. Right. This is just one example because I agree very much as well with changing the campaign every few weeks because that's definitely for sure. So I've got about 50 to 70 words, no more. Absolutely no filler. Each email focus on one problem at a time, no exceptions. Short sentences, make sure they're one line or mobile. Never start with a question. Stick to a neutral tone. Never use I say never there. Maybe I'm being a bit too much there, but focus on you. Be creative and concise. Sound assured. Don't use weak phrases like I believe. One of my just side note, one of my favorite phrases, I believe that we would be a good partnership for you. You may as well not say it. Never talk about features or benefits. Use PS in emails 2 and 3. Potentially link a success story or a piece of valuable resource. Um, Never mention saving time or saving money. These are benefits. They won't help you. Subject lines, exactly 2 words, all lowercase. Subject line has a big impact as well. Having spam words in your subject line or having more than 5 words, it drops off a cliff. So don't bother doing anything other than just getting the email clicked in your subject line. The value-based CTA must be the most relevant solution to their problem. Don't use weak phrases like just following up or imagine if you did X. In the final email, end with won't message again, hope I didn't do something wrong, no emojis ever. Again, you might break some of those rules. You might say, yeah, but I do it and it still gets meetings. Which is good. And I'm happy
Yeah,
to stand corrected on any particular industry, whatever works. Whenever you're getting 1 to 5% positive reply rate, you win essentially, if that works. The thing with
agree.
deliverability is, I think nowadays, if you can, you should be doing about at least a third. If you can get 2/3, it's great of your email influenced by AI somewhere. Again, it doesn't really matter in terms of unless you're getting a relevant email, because everything to do with your email should be relevant to the person you're reaching out to. Not personalized, that's different, but relevant at
Yeah,
least. And if you can use AI in a smart way, such as Lemlist, such as Clay, definitely, then it means that you can really cook with gas in terms of your positive reply rates. In deliverability specifically, the more varied your copy is, as Bill said, the better it is for your deliverability. At least when you do outbound, like Bill said, a really good point again is varying it for the persona. So making sure that you send a different message or a different campaign to CEOs and then to marketing managers and then to heads of sales, whatever. It has to be different because you solve different problems for each. And then I would say in a 3-step campaign, you send it to maybe 300-400 leads and then you iterate and then you improve. So if you do well or you don't do well, don't stop really. Change it a little bit, change the input for people that you're reaching out to. Spin tax is an interesting one. I see spin tax kind of, maybe Bill, that you've got some insight because someone's asked in the chat as well, Daryl. Um, I see it as kind of okay. I see it as just a little bonus where I can maybe change 10% of the email copy at the end. Would you mind is it okay if I were to, are you open to, I'd normally change a little bit of that, but what's your thoughts on that? Because I don't see it as hugely negative spin tax.
no, I wouldn't say it's negative overall. If it's the only personalization strategy within an email, it's probably not enough. But it's definitely useful in order to be rotating phrases and maybe doing smart tweaks. Like if it's Friday, send them an email and say, well, when they open it, match it to like the next work day and say, hey, let's schedule a call for Monday. Things like that are smart, easy to use. Spintex could also allow you to have one-liners dedicated to a specific persona or specific seniority within the business as well. So if you're looking to do like smaller type of personalization within an email, it's also a good way to go about it. But we're going to be discussing about AI personalization. Like I think it's much, much stronger whether you're using variables or copywriting the entire email. I don't think it's like such a big issue, but yeah, I've seen reports of it as well. Like again, and as you said, I don't think it's the biggest issue. I think overall it's a matter of having personalization in the email itself. And then the other things like if we look at things overall, when it comes to the email body in general and the email that we send, every campaign that eventually ends up on the spam folder or with lower deliverability has a weak offer. By weak offer, we can mean low relevance, low personalization, like all these elements that make it strong and actually important for someone to respond to it. Because you're never gonna see a link to reset the password on your spam folder. Yeah, you might, but because it's so important and because everyone clicks, everyone responds positively to that, the signals are quite obvious for email providers to not classify that as spam. So I think prioritizing and making sure that your email body is relevant for people and making them respond is kind of like the big unlock for deliverability. People could get away with it and they could get the impressions, I mean, the opens of the email in the past, but it's now becoming much, much harder to do so because, again, Google or Microsoft find it really easy to detect the meaning of a message, when it was sent, the fact that one domain sent, 1,000 identical emails. That's why, again, inbox rotation and all these things play a big role in the success of the campaigns. Another one, which would be interesting to discuss as well, and I have it a little bit later on, is maybe this one, the email open tracking, and then including links and images within an email. Obviously, starting from the first one, especially for email one, we try to avoid, I mean, not in the signature, but we generally try to avoid having links and any images, and at least until we get a response. And then definitely for open tracking, there's been a big kind of debate within 2024 whether this is something that should take place. I know we turn it off after a certain extent and after we validated our subject lines for campaigns, especially for campaigns that are having issues with deliverability after, let's say, 3 or 4 months that we've been successfully running the campaigns. It is a little bit of like a test and learn basis, and probably wouldn't recommend disabling it without having the ability to test deliverability with a tool like Lemworm or a similar one that allows you to test if you're landing on the inbox. But yeah, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, what you've seen work or not work. But yeah, these would be definitely two things that I would recommend that are like easy wins for 2024 and onwards.
Yeah, opening rates is an easy one. Turn it off. That's that. It has no positive impact. It doesn't allow you to do anything apart from maybe for one or two. The agency, there's a couple of agencies that are basically the best in the world. You'll have seen them on LinkedIn, whatever. They both told me the only time they would ever track it is to test kind of like a new email domain, maybe a couple of emails, and then they turn it off just to make sure it's gone through and just to make sure, like some tests, it's pointless. Even if it was accurate, which it isn't, it doesn't help you get towards your end goal of positive replies. It doesn't do anything. Okay, let's say an email gets opened 75% of the time and it has 1% positive reply rate. And there's another email that gets opened 32% and it has 5 or 6%. The one that you want is the one that's got 5 or 6. So you get no learning from open rates. So they're utterly pointless. If you're a marketing team and it's your main KPI, keep them on. But
Sure.
it's not going to help you, So there's my first point about open rates. The pictures and the links, yeah, keep your email. I think the signature is going to be really simple in the future as well. I think Google's going to start catching people out again. It comes down to, again, we sometimes forget why we're doing all of this, which is to get a positive reply. There's very, very little in your on the left-hand side that is prompting someone to reply to you. It's not the end of the world for your deliverability to have this stuff, but it's certainly not good. And I would not recommend having any of that stuff. I would have no links at all, unless you have, for example, a very, very credible LinkedIn page and you say, oh, here's my LinkedIn. Even then, in your signature, it should be identifying who you are, your company, and your name, your company, and anything else to build your credibility. I normally put my LinkedIn so people can see that I'm real and they see, oh, it is him. So it all lines up, and then suddenly there's a bit of truth there. Obviously, I do a lot on LinkedIn as well, so it's easy to say. But if you don't have anything, maybe, I mean, website. Do you put your website? I wouldn't, but if it, 2 and 2 equals 4, you've got tell Baker Phillips at Lemlist, and I've got the Lemlist website, lemlist.com. It's not going to kill your outreach efforts, but it's also not particularly beneficial, really. So I'd kind of avoid it. Yeah, that's why you're putting in your signature. Identify yourself. Don't raise any red flags, and make sure that you're not having that code trying to push its way into the inbox of your leads.
No, agreed there. And then let's start with warm up, but let's keep it a little bit simple to begin with, because I know that Lemworm, and we'll be discussing this later, has some advanced features as well that are quite useful and become quite niche. But it's obviously become mandatory. It should take place at least for 3 weeks. It wasn't like, I remember when we turned it on for the first time, I think it was 2021 or 2022. It was like an amazing boost. Like no one was using it. It was so easy to set up. You had, just a few clicks, set it up, boom, you were going to the inbox. And it's now become like mandatory. And even with that, like your campaign can still, if you do any of the things that we discussed before, can still end up on the spam folder, which means you have to pause it, let it get it warmed up again, your deliverability score to increase, and then continue running the campaigns, which is, and on point with that, the obvious kind of next step is having backup email accounts and domains to be using in your outreach campaigns, because obviously if you have 15% or 20% or more of your campaigns and emails delivering to spam or not delivering at all, it's already worth it, and you're probably losing on your campaign performance. So yeah, curious if you have any thoughts or new updates or anything around warm up, at least like the more easy to understand and more simple things to begin with.
I think put it on and put it to it's the sending limits really. Let's have a look here. My warm-ups on Lemwarm do not go above 82, 85. Okay. If you have warm-ups that aren't going in, increasing, or your warm-up score, deliverability score is not going up, it's likely to do with the other four pillars. So you can't just have warm-up tool on. It's going to therefore go to 90, 95, 97. It doesn't work like that. You have to make sure your data quality is really good so emails aren't bouncing. You have to make sure that your reply rates are staying between 5 and 15, maybe percent, 20% if you can. You have to make sure the positive reply rate is staying at least 1%, trying to get to 5%. I could go on and on and on and on and on. The whole point about prospection is everything affects deliverability, who you're reaching out to, the cleanliness of your list, whether you're reaching out to deliverable emails, so on and so on. If people are manually marking your message as spam.
Yeah.
So if you, the main thing I do see though is technical setup not being perfect, although that's quite rare. So you make sure you have the SPF, DKIM, all of the acronyms, and then you have your sending volume. So your sending volume has to be less than 30 emails a day, the total. It just does. So if you're sending anything like that, and this is one of my favorite things when I give these kind of tips, advice, or whatever you want to call it, people follow most of them. They don't follow all of them. And then they come back to me and say, hey, we followed your advice. It didn't work. And I check and they didn't. So the main one is don't be greedy. Get lots of different email addresses. Think about your domains and your domain age. If it's more than 4, 5, 6 months, that's better than less than 6 months. But overall, just be slow. Put it to 10, your Lemwarm score, warm it up nicely, and then also work really, really acutely on the other things alongside your warm up. Final point is it's meant to replicate a real human doing prospection. So you technically don't need, if you were able to send personalized emails to every single person in your lead list, the emails are correct, you wouldn't need a warm up. Technically, there's no need for it, but you can't do that across 15, 30, 40, 60, 80, however many email addresses you have. So you just need to understand that it's that little bit on the side that's sending emails on your behalf, all that's changed, all that's AI, all that are going to be different every time, alongside your messages, which should also be sort of different every time using AI to the right people getting replies. So it's basically Lemwarm now, or whatever warm-up tool, it has to act pretty much one-to-one. So 10 emails in Lemwarm, maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 emails in Lemlist, and then that's where you get your daily sending limit. So don't think about it just as warm-up like before, Bill was turning it on and then seeing the wealth of results that it was giving pretty much automatically. It's just now way harder than that. So you got to put it on and be careful.
And I think one of the main issues, most likely for a domain that's not getting fully warmed up, could be that because we all redirect our forwarding domains to the main one, is doing a deliverability test on the main domain. Because a lot of times, if you have 20, 30, 50 domains redirecting to the same main domain, it becomes easy to get tracked. And then if you have been marked as spam on your main domain, it could be affecting your secondary ones. And we can talk about it a little bit in the kind of like advanced section. There's a technique you can do about it that's kind of brand new and seems to be working quite nicely. But yeah, it also might have to do with the copy that you're using in your emails. Maybe one of the keywords has been flagged because you've overused it, or you're using something that's perceived from the spam filters as spam. So there's obviously a lot of different variables that you need to be testing, including the type of inboxes that you're using. And we're going to chat about it in a while as well. Another one that's quite interesting is, and obvious slash interesting, but still not many people do it. And it's one of the first checks I do whenever we see low performance on a campaign, assuming that the infrastructure and the copy is not the issue, is not using or not reaching out to catch all or unverifiable email addresses, or at least deprioritizing them. Not the unverifiable ones, but at least the catch all. So obviously the first step is always going to be waterfall enrichment, using Clay, using Lemlist, making sure that you have the full profile of the person you're reaching out to. And then you want to validate email addresses again. You can use a litany of tools. I've just outlined the basic ones, and I find it really useful that Lemlist has the verifier, which includes LinkedIn profiles as well, like in one go, because you can just upload the leads pretty much from any source, and just with a few clicks, you end up with a good valid list. The other tip that's a bit more recent is prioritizing prospects that use Google for their inboxes. We're going to talk about it in a bit as well, but it's handy if someone is going into the trouble of using Lead Magic, let's say, to verify email addresses or even Clay. You can easily get the email provider that your prospect is using, and then prioritizing the ones that are, well, pretty much not Microsoft or other. And then last obvious one, and this is something that Lemlist makes it really easy, is using multi-channel outreach. I mean, yes, you want to maximize it for any audience. You're reaching out to the maximum number of people. That obviously includes verifying email addresses and also having waterfall enrichment so you can get the maximum number of prospects with valid emails. But the other one is like if you can't find an email address or for any reason the niche is hard to reach via email, let's say it's enterprise with enterprise businesses, always sending in deliverability is harder because they have more advanced spam filters, etc., etc. You can use multi-channel outreach. So it doesn't have to be a huge volume campaigns, but for any unverifiable or catch-all email addresses, or if you're segmenting your outreach towards SMBs and then also enterprises, using LinkedIn steps as part of your campaign should like be a main thing. And within Lemnis conditions, it becomes quite easy to do that. Another interesting, I wouldn't say hack necessarily, but strategy we've followed, especially for both industries as well as regions where they wanted to be super compliant. Like we were working with a multinational company that wanted to do outreach to local businesses. We used email addresses, phone numbers, all the contact details we could find to help them build meta ads audiences so that they can retarget those companies pretty much with custom audiences instead of running email campaigns. But curious to hear your thoughts, any tips around multi-channel, any other use cases you have or you've been seeing in 2024, or ways we can use it to get inside of people's, businesses, I guess.
No, I think you've got voice notes you can now do. So you can obviously put voice notes into a Lemnis campaign. You can put them one to one, or you can do a general voice note, and that works incredibly well. You can normally get, 30, 40, 50% reply rates from those kind of campaigns. Depends who you're targeting, depends how many people accept, etc. I just focus primarily on multi-channel A/B testing. Making sure you're only sending to deliverable emails. So I use an advanced condition in my Lemnis campaign where the first step is send to deliverable emails only, and then send status is deliverable on the email, yes, and then I only send emails to people with deliverable emails. Don't send to risky or undeliverable, and that data is as important as the deliverable email. So yeah, in terms of multi-channel, make sure you A/B test, focus on one problem at a time per email, and then iterate over and over again. And I would only send a maximum of 3 steps in your multi-channel campaigns. Any more than 3, and then you can't really finish a campaign very quickly. You have to wait, and then you create another campaign, another one, and then you never actually end up finishing the leads. So actually you need that data. So 3 steps, multi-channel, of course, do LinkedIn on the other side. If you want to have a LinkedIn, my final point is if you want to send to deliverable emails and then you want to also have a LinkedIn step on that side with the email addresses, put it at the end. And then what will happen is it will basically catch all of the leads as long as you have the LinkedIn URL if you import from LinkedIn. So you send the emails, 1, 2, 3 emails. They can go quickly because you have inbox rotation. If you're using a tool like Lemnis, most of them have inbox rotation as well. And then at the end, you put a LinkedIn connection request with a little message. If they didn't reply to any of your emails, perhaps they'll do the LinkedIn step. So there you go. Not rocket science, but that's what I'd say.
No, but it adds steps, right? Like this is not something we had to worry about like 6 or 12 months ago. It's like, okay, put together the prospect list, verify the email addresses, just dump it on Lemlist, click send, and you're out. And it was one less thing to worry about. It does make the process a little bit more intricate, but again, it makes it slightly harder, slightly more complicated, but not super hard to do nonetheless. And then let's discuss about a little bit more advanced stuff. And I do have quite a few things to go through there, from new tech infrastructure to advanced tips. Starting with the first one, which did become quite obvious as well. It's testing out multiple email providers from your end as a sender within your campaigns. And this is an advice I gave to a friend a few days ago. He's like, we're seeing low deliverability. The email provider we're using said everything is okay with our deliverability. There's nothing wrong. I was like, did you test a different provider? And usually this will include a mix of Google, Microsoft, and then the third provider, which I'm not gonna take sides or recommend one versus the other, but there's a long list out there of companies that are offering email infrastructure, which is super affordable, but also really easy to set up. Like within a few clicks, you can buy a domain, do the DNS setup of the settings we discussed, and have the details to add within Lemlist or any other provider within a few clicks. And that goes hand in hand with what I mentioned before. It's like within your infrastructure, you do want to make sure you have a percentage of backup email inboxes, typically 10 to 20%. If you have a lot of experience in a specific industry, you typically would understand beforehand if it's a risky industry. Let's say it's security or anything to do with pharma and healthcare, definitely becomes, or iGaming becomes harder to have good deliverability. So in those cases, definitely diversifying your infrastructure and then having backup email inboxes. The other one is matching the email infrastructure, and this has also honestly become like a big unlock. This is also commonly known as MX record matching. I have a Clay table that allows you to do that within a few clicks. The link is again on the slides. And pretty much it's the practice of adjusting your email infrastructure, your email provider, according to your prospect's email provider. We know that enterprises use more Microsoft inboxes, small and medium-sized businesses use more Google Workspace, and then obviously there's companies that use other. So having Gmail to Gmail and Outlook to Outlook, and maybe then also testing other providers to Gmail and Outlook. And by other providers, you can look at the list on the previous slide. It allows you to maximize your chances of delivering to the inbox, because for whatever reason, Google doesn't want to block Google Workspace accounts that heavily. Same for Outlook with Microsoft. And it's usually a good test to keep in mind. And once you've done this once for a specific industry, for a specific audience, you typically get an idea how many businesses are using Gmail, how many businesses are using Outlook and other providers. And that kind of allows you to edit the mix of inboxes that you're using in your campaigns. Especially important if you're doing more enterprise level outreach or more SMB level outreach, to adjust your inboxes accordingly. Like if you're reaching out to small and medium businesses, don't go buying Microsoft inboxes. It's not really going to help you. You'll get lower delivery limits per inbox and probably lower deliverability as well. Again, as we've discussed, for the time being at least, Microsoft, and they might adjust that, is harder to get into the inbox. It's harder to get good results. The other one that again has to do with infrastructure is using dedicated or private, as it's called, infrastructure. This is again for tougher niches, especially using a dedicated server, even though a bit harder to implement. It gives you more control over your reputation, because you don't get to share your IP address or anything else with other companies if you're using a third-party provider. But there are a few out there. They're a little bit more costly, but they could be worth it again if you're reaching out to industries that are harder. I don't know if you've observed anything around that, or if you've seen, I'm sure Lemlist has a lot of data when it comes to provider matching, how one delivers additional infrastructures as well.
Provider matching, no way. Just because we might do it, but the clients that we have, it's too much. It's a step where if it's integrated in the future and there's some clear proof that we have that it's having a huge impact, then for sure we'll add like a feature, but not now. In terms of Microsoft and Google, I have seen a big difference in that, and Microsoft sucks. Google is so much better. Microsoft is honestly painful. So yeah, if you're having deliverability problems, check if you're on Microsoft. If you're not on Microsoft, then you can follow the other steps. If you're on Microsoft, start there. But it's going to be a nightmare to get your IT team to switch, probably because, like as you said, it's preferred by bigger enterprises. I haven't seen anything in terms of the Google to Google. I'm sure it has an impact, but the time and impact kind of ratio that it has, I'm not sure we're there yet. When all the other things kind of can be improved, I haven't tested that too
Definitely.
much myself. But yeah, the one that we use Gandhi to set up email addresses, and we also use, I think, Mailforge a little bit, but you'll have to ask Lucas Perret and Lucien. They put those in place. They're not convinced by most of them, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I got a few comments. And we've
Yeah.
seen very good results, like obviously just changing the infrastructure. If your offer sucks, if the prospect quality is not there, if people are not responding to your email, if you're using spam words, ultimately it's going to have the same impact. Like it's not really going to change anything. It's just like if you've optimized everything else, then that remains something that might be worth testing, especially if you're at the stage where you're scaling campaigns. Because again, I understand that these all by themselves are not things that one would go implement all at once. It's not realistic to do so, and we don't do it for every campaign either. What we typically do is we have the basic setup for deliverability or warm up and everything else. And then for niches and for accounts that are harder to crack, because we go through like 20 plus different campaign setups and types every single week, we'll identify, okay, do we need other email providers? Do we need dedicated infrastructure? Do we need advanced AI copywriting? And we'll go into a few more details. And we just pick the ones that we identify make the most sense, depending again on the offer, what we need to personalize. We don't try to implement everything at once. I wouldn't definitely not recommend that.
I think it's a good point as well. I think the point of having different domains, having as many different ones on the back burner, so literally warming up in the background, is a great idea as well. I think that, yeah, and finally, very quickly, that point about making sure everything else is going well. I think sometimes with volume, historically, people have got away with it and still get away with sending loads of emails and loads of volume, because that makes up for the crappy quality or the crappy whatever that they have in place, which is fine. If it gets results, it doesn't really matter. No one's died, no
Yeah.
one's been killed in the process. It doesn't particularly matter. But for sustainability and for consistency and for scalability and growth in the future as a team, as a company, and to kind of understand your business and to have people hired in your business that are sales or SDRs doing prospection, it's not very good. So again, have loads of emails on the back burner. That's great, but don't just have them there because you burn through so many because you're doing all the worst practices. So yeah, it's a bit of both. But not Bill kind of summarized it very nicely, just to add onto what he said.
Yeah. No, infrastructure at the end of the day is not going to do the trick if everything else is not optimized. And I think that this slide is a nice recap. Like start with prospects using Google inboxes. If you have that data, if you use Lead Magic, for example, for the validation of the emails, it'll give you that. Then Outlook, if you can do that. Then rest of the providers. Avoid obviously catch all email addresses. Bigger companies are, and obviously in risky industries are harder. And then we've seen that if you start sending to Microsoft inboxes first, you'll see a massive difference from sending to Google. You don't have to, validate the email provider. You can just start by companies that are smaller in size. Once you exhaust them, go into the ones that are slightly kind of larger, because by default you're going to have more issues with deliverability. Another one, and we've talked a little bit about it, but I think it would be interesting to stay a little bit more, is AI copywriting. And again, the filters by themselves have become good at detecting spin text, but you can use other tools like obviously Lemlist, but you can do it with Clay and maybe Twain as well, which is specialized on that, to personalize every email for every prospect, at least email one, which not only helps with personalization, but it also decreases the chances of landing on spam, simply because every email is slightly different from the previous one. Like if you use meaningful enough personalization. And again, I'm gonna just briefly go through that, and we can focus a little bit more on tips from your end as well. You can obviously do it within Clay, using what we call personalization variables with ChatGPT. Obviously, multiple steps, and you have to load the prospects, do that within this interface, then put it back in your email. You can do it with Twain, which is also now natively integrating with Clay, which is quite useful as well. And then obviously you can also do it within the lemlist interface itself, which is, I guess, a lot easier since you have the email copy, you have the prospect, you can look at the actual copy itself. I'm wondering if you have any tips on, AI variables that you've seen work best, personalization examples that have really changed the performance of the campaigns.
Yeah, I can think of a couple straight away. One is a subject line. So wherever you import the data, if you can link the subject line to something relevant to the person, then that is has a big impact on the replies that you get. The subject line is obviously the first thing they see, and it's a nice little intro to making them think, "Oh, this must be something for me." I'm going to talk about relevancy very quickly, very quickly. Relevancy is something that makes it that makes the email clearly relevant to a group of people. So it's not personalization like, hey, Tal, I saw that you spoke in a video about this specific topic, blah, 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 blah. That's just to me. Relevancy is something that is to me, Tal, a sales leader in the SaaS industry that posts on LinkedIn quite often. So that's relevant. Suddenly, if you're talking about those topics, I'm interested. It's not about one of my posts, but it's about LinkedIn in general. So that I should be interested. AI should be focused around improving and enhancing the relevancy of the emails that you send that are already good. So again, we could take a whole other email copywriting and best practice video, but you should understand inside out, and it should be clear when the recipient reads the email that the sender, you, when you're doing prospecting, understands very well their current process, very well the pains that they're sort of going through. Don't focus too much on pains, but pains are there. Also, that you understand maybe the root causes of what's sort of solving the problems that you're outlining in your email. And then you also are able to provide some value that's specific to them. That there is where I would use AI, however that is. So I mean, you can go on to company summaries, you can go on to telling AI to take the information company summary on LinkedIn and asking it to assume things. So what do you think this company might be suffering with? Who do you think this company probably reaches out to? Then you have the ICP. It's endless. It's literally endless as to what works, what doesn't, but it will be based around, sorry, the other four pillars, how well you're doing. How well is AI working? Well, depends who you're targeting, depends how good the rest of the email is, depends if it's multi-chat and so on. So sorry to give like a crappy, annoying answer, but there is no particular thing. The people that get the best results with AI are the ones that already have the best understanding of who their ICP is and already have the best understanding of how to iterate and improve their email campaigns.
Yeah, no, it's a really valid point. We actually have a client right now. We've made a certain ICP work. There's a certain one that we've been working towards. We know we're gonna make it work. We just need a little bit of time. And they keep insisting on us using AI personalizations. And I know it's mostly the offer that's not resonating because the overall number of positive replies is not high. And I'm like, my thinking is like, you can try and put lipstick on a pig, but at the end of the day, you're still kissing a pig. Like no matter how much AI personalization you put into it, and that was the exact expression I used just for laughs. It's not going to change the fact that your offer sucks. Like people are not interested. So if you tell me that, oh, I saw you went to that uni, or you're using this tech, or A, B, and C, like it still won't really make sense to me if your offer is not, again, if it's a software or a solution or a service that I can find out there that doesn't have any unique selling point or anything that you can point out to that's like a USP and a reason good enough for me to engage. And I think again, yeah, going back to deliverability, it's like these are the cases where we see low performance on the campaigns. Like if you remove everything else from the equation, the strength of the offer and the relevance that you have to the prospect is ultimately what determines the success or the failure of a campaign. Like you can try AI personalization, try the best deliverability infrastructure, but ultimately the spam filter and the engagement with those emails is going to lead you back to the spam folder if you don't fix the relevance and if you don't ensure that what you're sending is something that people want to listen to and they want to act and they want to act now.
Hmm.
Um,
Because I say one thing, Bill, on that point as well. Questions maybe you want to do at the end or whenever you're ready as well. I see some in one in the chat. The I have seen a big impact on the deliverability score and the amount of replies I get by changing a vast amount of my email. I mean, more than 3/4 with AI. So I tried it, and I did it for about almost 2,000 leads. I know. Uh, over 1,500, but 1,600 leads, and it had a big old impact. So Again, it's just to add to the point. Of course, there's so many different factors, and I've kind of I'm going to keep sticking on this point, and Bill said it again, where there's lots of different things. It really is every single aspect is deliverability. Prospection is so entwined with those. I relegated it to 4 pillars, but those points about deliverability, people try and say, oh, what should we do now? Everything, still everything. AI, still try and change as much of the copy, but still don't, piss around with something like, I saw you went to this school. Oh, yeah. Like, it's pointless. So you got to write the best email you possibly can and then think, right, I wonder if there was a way in an ideal world, how could I improve it with a bit of AI? What would be a really nice bit of data for ChatGPT to pull or
Yeah.
Lemlist or whatever to put in there? So yeah, it does have, I have seen it positively impact my emails when at least 3/4 of the email changes every single lead that I reach out to. That I thought was really cool. Anyway, carry on.
That's actually a really good point because I think like people think about AI personalization like, okay, I'll just change the USP and the USP will be like a 2 to 3 word phrase where I'll add in the middle of a sentence and that'll change everything. Like it's not going to change. It's not going to have that big of a difference. So definitely agreed with your point. Another one is a little bit on advanced email warm-up tips. And I know this is something where, I think pretty much like Lemlist invented email warm up back in the day. I think I remember the thread even that it happened on Facebook. So obviously having personalized warm up emails, warming up using real email templates, having deliverability alerts and being able to test deliverability on a weekly basis, having a warm up network again tailored to your industry. This is especially important because imagine if there's spammers in your network that are actually mostly sending spam out there. It probably means that your campaign, yeah, you'll get boosted and you'll get on the inbox, but you're associated with email addresses that are delivering spam. And then obviously within that, randomizing the warm-up behavior as well. I'm curious, like if you've seen anything else within the warm-up process itself that helps enhance results, any of the advanced Lemworm features out there that have really made a difference.
Yeah, it's going to sound weird, but personalized warm up, basically. So the more that you can do, it's just not to use it as a silver bullet. I'm aware of the time, so I'll keep it brief. But the other things I've mentioned, there's Lemwarm Smart, which basically increases the relevancy again of the emails that you're sending. For example, if I prospect to North America, America, and Europe, sales, heads of sales, heads of BDR, and whatever, I send this many emails to people in this industry. Let's say software, tech, and construction. I'm making it up. Lemwarm Smart will specifically take that data and it will start to include that in all my emails. So suddenly all my emails are relevant and it makes me look more human and real with what I'm doing. So the deliverability score goes up. Everything to do with that is coupled with making sure that your actual prospection emails are also doing that relevant, high reply rate, and good. So no, it's so complicated, honestly. The whole of the Mormon things like that on the left hand side, I see some points. I don't even want to get into it. Just make sure you've got that on. You're sending 5 or 10 a day in your warm up, and then you're doing the best practices on the other side. That should help with everything that you're doing. Yeah, with the deliverability score.
Nice one. Yeah, and obviously, along with that, running inbox placement tests on a weekly basis, because again, especially if you're not tracking opens, you don't have like a really good framework for identifying when your emails might be hitting the spam folder. You might think that it's the quality of the prospect, but running deliverability tests, getting those notifications, even on a weekly basis, can make sure that you can avoid the spam folder. And obviously, if you see that you have any deliverability issues, using your backup inboxes in between. I'm not gonna stay on this any longer. A few of the more advanced topics we've recently started testing with. One of them is domain masking, which is when setting up multiple domains, you point them to your main website. At some point, Google and other providers detect this, and they detect it as a maleficent practice, and they're like, this is domain spoofing. This is you're pretending to be someone else when you get too many spam complaints in your actual email. So there are a few tools out there. One we've tested is called Email Guard. You set it up, and pretty much what it does is you redirect your domains to Email Guard, and the Email Guard redirects it to your website, and it kind of randomizes that behavior so that your main website is not linked directly to your forwarding/outreach domains, which, again, helps kind of decouple a little bit the outreach that you're doing from the actual website of the business, de-risking and also decreasing the chances of going to spam. Two more, and then we're there. And I have an interesting slide for the end. Rotating your infrastructure. If you see that deliverability is not going up, other than restructuring your entire campaign, maybe look into adding new or different domains or having additional kind of infrastructure components to it, especially again for campaigns that have had deliverability issues for a while, because this might actually mean that your domain has been burned or has become part of a spam list that's hard to get out of. Again, this has to be combined with changing your copy and your campaign structure. And then another one, which again, along with multi-channel email, I think is a quite valid one, is using inbound-led, outbound, or pretty much using intent signals and sources that kind of give you the assurance that people have either become aware of your brand or become aware of you as a person by targeting website visitors. I know you're baking that into Lemlist really, really soon. LinkedIn profile visitors as well, and then maybe even companies hiring, job changes, company news, running campaigns based off of that, based off of those signals that pretty much make the company at the other end a little bit more susceptible to your outreach. Because again, and we've seen this with all types of clients that say you offer web development services or app development, unless I have an RFP and unless I'm in the process of revamping my website, I'm not going to respond positively to an email about changing my website infrastructure or migrating to Optimizely or whatever other platform. Whereas if there is a relevant signal, then it makes it much more likely that the email is going to come kind of like in the right moment, which means that the response rate is going to be higher. The positive replies are overall going to be higher. The signals are going to be good for Google and Microsoft, which means that your overall campaign performance is just going to increase. I don't know if you have like any notes kind of like on the final items or anything you've tested or have been testing. Just unmute.
Yep, better if I wasn't on mute. No, nothing to add. So no, I think you summarized it
Cool.
nicely.
I tried to kind of like make a nice recap. The cold email infrastructure for 2025 definitely includes a lot of Lemlist, but no matter what you're using, I think being able to have a solid set of tools that you can implement across the board, that you can use for multiple purposes, whether it's LinkedIn outreach or cold email, and then obviously validating the prospects, setting up emails and everything would make it easier. Um, and yeah, I don't really have any next steps. Maybe just a quick recap. Email deliverability obviously requires a little bit more effort, requires slightly different tools and processes, requires tweaks in how we handle deliverability, slightly different infrastructure. But for those who keep practicing this, I think continuing with high quality deliverability for 2025 as well, especially because for the first at least few months of the year, I doubt anyone's going to be making changes as we're waiting to see how the impact of all the changes that have happened within 2024 is going to roll out. Makes it a pretty safe bet to continue being, high deliverability in the campaigns. And then again, honestly, by implementing these strategies overall, we've barely noticed the difference in the results of our campaigns. Like wherever we've seen deliverability drop, and we add any of these measures, whether it's AI copywriting, whether it's additional backup inboxes, other providers in terms of the inboxes that we use, or email validation for the prospects and prioritizing Google, we've always seen results go back up. So it's definitely not a lost game, not a lost cause. It's just a matter of people tweaking their process to adapt into what works for the new year and moving forward as well. Any final notes? And then let's see if we have any questions.
Well, good for me. I think there was one question which was about the biggest challenge in prospection, I think. Where is it? I'm just trying to find it now. Loving the points made. From your personal experience, what has been the most challenging hurdle you've faced in outbound campaigns, and how did you overcome it? I'd love to hear about what helped you turn it around. The thing that was the hardest was finding the copy that worked. So very quickly, You have to find the ICP, and you have to find, so the person you're reaching out to. So who's the best ICP? Is it head of sales? Is it marketing? Is it blah 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 blah, or and so on? And then you have to find, okay, what campaign structure works? Okay, this, and then you have to find what the problem is. Okay, I'm doing something wrong. I don't know what it is. So finding out that, and then okay, maybe it's my copywriting. How do I know? How do I not know? So that took me a long time to actually put some frameworks in place, which is obviously what I share with all the Lemlist clients that I look after in my portfolio. The biggest users, I help them get the results. But the focusing on one, the copywriting that actually works, at least to get 1 to 5%, that was the hardest thing, especially when you don't know what the problem is. You're kind of walking in the dark and you're thinking, I'm not sure if I'm going in the right direction, if it's right, if it's wrong. So honestly, it was that. The actual structure stuff, the deliverability stuff, the lead list, the whole part of it is the difficulty, and it all kind of merges into one. So yeah, not knowing what the problem was and trying to find out how to put a framework in place to be able to replicate the success once I had it. That was very hard. It took a long time. So yeah, that's what I'd say.
And I believe you have a nice ChatGPT workflow built for identifying the core offer, the core issue, and
Yeah,
building it as well.
yeah. Do you want me to share it in the chat, or
Yeah, why
it
not?
can be? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll share
And I
this. So
can
this is
include
what
it
I
in the
use.
link as well. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what I use, I wrote this basically. This is if God forbid you want to think like me or get inside my head. This is the way you can do it. So,
Nice.
in terms of a building block and the ingredients that I would use when I'm doing research on a particular person, particular ICP, particular whatever, that is what I would recommend that you need. So that there, have a look, and it should give you some pointers. And you can obviously get in touch if you want to ask any questions about it.
That's perfect, man. Okay, let's wrap it up, and we're also on time. So I've added a few links in the deck. One for Clay, adding having a few bonus credits when you sign up. An obvious one for Lemlist. A lot of the things that we've been discussing today, you can actually achieve it with just one platform. I think it's an amazing opportunity. Side note, we are hiring for outbound and GDM strategists. Do DM me on LinkedIn. You can DM me Lemlist or just hiring if you want to learn more details. And definitely DM both myself and Tal if you have any questions about Lemlist, outbound, the future of where it's going, any problems or issues with your campaigns, and anything you need help with. I think this and hope as well. This has been insightful, a little bit fun, a little bit useful in terms of improving deliverability. Hope everyone has benefited massively from it. Huge thanks to Tal and the Lemlist team for working with us on this, for being here, for sharing these awesome tips and strategies and insight from running all these accounts. Again, and pleasure for having everyone join us.
Thank you, guys. Nice one.